Hello, welcome to our Lesson 1, An Introduction to Microbiology. In this course, we're going to learn about different types of microorganisms such as bacteria, protozoa, fungi, algae, and viruses. For each lesson, we have a list of learning objectives so that you will have a good idea of what we're going to cover in each lesson. For example, we have some terms that we're going to use. We're going to describe microorganisms and several uses of microorganisms. We're going to describe different types of cells. And we're going to also describe how these microorganisms are classified. And finally, we're going to learn a little bit about the history of the field of microbiology. So let's begin. So what is microbiology? It is part of the field of biology, which is the study of life. But we're just going to focus on the microbes. Okay, so microbes from the root word are very small organisms. So they are living things, but too small to be seen without a microscope. So they are all around us, but we just can't see them. So how small are these microorganisms? How can we see the invisible world around us? For example, we can easily see people, we can easily see animals and plants, we can easily see a chicken egg with our naked eye. However, when we go to tinier organisms like fungi and protozoa, where they are single-celled organisms, we need the aid of a light microscope. Even smaller than that are bacteria. And again, we need the light microscope to see that. When we go even smaller, like when we look at viruses, light microscope is not enough. We need a stronger microscope, like the electron microscope, in order to see viruses. And just looking at the size of things, we have proteins, lipids, and atoms. Smaller molecules can be seen using the electron microscope. So why do we care about these tiny living things? How do these microbes affect our lives? They happen to be very important in nature. These microbes recycle the vital elements in nature. So in nature, we have carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur that all living things need and to have a balanced life on Earth. Also, the microbes that are photosynthetic, just like algae and cyanobacteria, they produce a lot of food and oxygen through the process of photosynthesis. So they are mainly aquatic microbes that produce the food. They are the basis of the food chain. They are primary producers that produce food for fish and other organisms that live in the ocean and on lakes. Bacteria and fungi also help decompose our waste. So when living things die, or if we have waste product, they go back to the soil and they become back to the basic elements so they can be recycled. We produce a lot of waste, water waste, sewage waste, and these are recycled back by bacteria so that we have clean water. Here's an example of a solid municipal waste being turned and it is treated by bacteria, so these can then be recycled back for composting. These guys are helping to clean up some waste, okay, and microbes are used in order to clean up pollutants such as oil spills and different types of contamination. And this process of using the microbes to clean up the pollutants is called bioremediation. Microbes are also used in order to produce food. Like here we have the whole process of making cheese. So this is a process called biotechnology, where microbes make chemicals, okay, that are being sold in industries such as alcohol, acetone, vinegar, and different kinds of food. Here, just like the cheese, we also produce yogurt and bread and beer and wine. All of this are different industries that use microorganisms. We have experience being vaccinated, and probably sometime in the future, you might be one of these nurses that will have to vaccinate people. And these vaccines or hormones or enzymes are produced using microbes through the process of genetic engineering. Our body is also covered by a lot of microbes. Here is just an example. On our tongue, there's all of this rod-shaped, circular type of microbes. These are called our normal microbiota or our normal flora. And we have an amazing relationship. A lot of them are very friendly microbes that grow on us or inside us. And we have a symbiotic relationship with these microorganisms. Some of them will help us produce vitamins and folic acid. So every time we eat, they will metabolize these vitamins, so it will be available for us. And so we have a mutualistic relationship with our normal microbiota. We benefit, and the microbes benefit as well. Some microbes will protect us against disease, and they will help prevent the overgrowth of pathogens. So that's an advantage for us. That's a type of commensalism, where we benefit even if the microbes are not benefiting or they are unharmed. There's only a few microbes that actually cause disease under certain circumstances, and these are called pathogens, or some pathogens will find an opportunity to cause disease. So when we are harmed but the microbes benefit from that, then this relationship is called parasitism. So we have a very complex relationship, interaction with the microorganisms. Here is just a little idea of how many microbes are present on and in our body. For example, in our skin, there's around 1,000 species of bacteria present, from Candida, Staphylococcus, Streptococcus, on our skin. When we look in our intestines, look at this, about 40,000 species, including Clostridium, E. coli, in our intestines. So whatever we eat, they will also metabolize that. So our bodies is like an ecosystem of a variety of different types of microbes. Microbes can also grow and attach on solid surfaces, and that is called the biofilms. For example, here we have a picture of round-shaped bacteria called Staphylococcus, and they're growing on a catheter. So bacteria growing on medical implants, that's not a good idea because then they can cause disease. But they are part of what microbes do. They grow on rocks, on pipes, in our teeth, and in different things. In this class, we will also have a chance to grow microbes in petri dishes. And here's just an example of different ways microbes are growing, different patterns of growth. Aren't they pretty? So what are the different types of microbes? Again, we have bacteria, archaea, protozoa, algae, fungi, and viruses. So we're going to cover each one of these briefly in this introductory part. So here's just an example of their pictures. Okay, single-celled bacteria. Here are some fungi and protozoa and algae and viruses. So sometimes it is very challenging to distinguish each of these microorganisms because they are so tiny. So we have to find a systematic way of learning about these microbes. And scientists have done that by comparing their cells and their characteristics. Before we continue, let's look at some evolutionary history of the living things on Earth. Here is our present time, and going back in the life of the Earth, 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion, and 4.5 billion were probably the origin of Earth. Okay. The very ancient first type of cell that evolved through this time was single-celled organism. And this are grouped in the bacteria. And again, from the ancestral type evolved the archaea, another group of single-celled organism. And over time, more complexity and evolution occurred until you have more complex organisms called the eukaryotes. And with the eukaryotes, you have the evolution of different types of animals, such as insects and reptiles and mammals, and eventually we have the evolution of humans. So this gives us an idea that all living things on Earth are related back to the ancestral cell type. And we all share some common characteristics that are carried from the ancestral cell into the different groups of organisms, from the microbes to the bigger organisms. So what are these characteristics that are common to all organisms? First, all these organisms are made of cell. That's the basic building block of life. And inside a cell, even this simplest ancestral cell, you have the genetic material or the DNA. And all cells, whether it is a single cell or a multicellular, bigger, more complex organisms, we all need ATP as a form of energy. And all cells also have a plasma membrane. And inside the cells are organelles called ribosomes that make proteins. So all of these characteristics are present from the very ancestral type of single-celled organism, and it has been passed on to the different groups of organisms that are present until this time. So before we continue, let's define some terms that we are going to use again and again. So unicellular are organisms that are made of one cell, or sometimes it's called a single-celled organism. Multicellular organisms are composed of many cells. Bacteria and archaea are unicellular organisms. Us people, we are composed of many cells, many organs, so we are multicellular. Viruses, on the other hand, are acellular. They are not made of cell. And we're going to cover viruses later on in this first unit. Prokaryotic cells are cells that are much simple in structure and they lack a nucleus around their DNA. So these are cells that are more primitive or more simple, just like cells of bacteria, and they are called prokaryotic. And over time, there was the evolution of a nucleus and the evolution of eukaryotic cells that then contain their DNA inside the nucleus. And eventually they evolved more complex structures and organelles.